When we think of Pythagoras, what usually comes to mind is the triangle equation, the theorem we all learned in school. But that was just the surface. The real Pythagoras was far more than a mathematician. He was an initiate in the Egyptian mysteries, a prophet of the soul, a master of the invisible. Few people know this, but Pythagoras founded an initiatic school, a true temple of silence, where disciples would spend years in absolute silence before receiving even the smallest instruction. What was taught there was not meant for everyone. It was dangerous knowledge, powerful, forbidden. Pythagoras believed the entire universe was moved by vibrations, that everything, absolutely everything, is sound. Not the sound we hear with our ears, but an invisible harmony that sustains the cosmos. According to ancient accounts like those of Iamblichus and Philolaus, Pythagoras claimed that the planets produced sounds as they moved. Each celestial body, with its own speed and trajectory, emitted a specific note. Together, these notes formed what he called the music of the spheres, a cosmic symphony. We don't hear it, they said, because we've been immersed in it since birth, like a fish unaware of the water around it. To understand this vision, we must forget what we've been taught about numbers as cold and lifeless things. Pythagoras saw numbers as forces. For him, the number 1 was the origin of everything. 2 brought duality and conflict. 3 created harmony. 4 organized the material world. Each number had a function in the balance of the universe. Weren't just tools to count sheep, they were the hidden gears of reality. This relationship between number and sound became clear to him by observing musical instruments. He noticed that pleasant musical notes always followed exact proportions: 2-1, 4-3, 3-2. Then came a powerful insight. These proportions didn't just organize music, they organized nature. What sounded good to the ears reflected a deeper order present throughout the cosmos. This discovery makes Pythagoras far more than a mathematician. He was, in truth, one of the first to understand that the universe has structure. There are patterns behind apparent chaos, and those patterns aren't just in the stars. They're within us as well. That's why his teachings didn't stay theoretical. He and his disciples used sound as a spiritual practice. They believed certain melodies could calm the mind, balance the body, even heal illness. Before sleep, they used specific music to cleanse their thoughts. Upon waking, other music aligned the spirit with the new day. Music was medicine. It was prayer. It was inner discipline. Today, science is catching up to these ideas. Modern physics speaks of vibration as the foundation of matter. Cellular biology studies how sound affects cells. Sound therapies and healing frequencies are making a comeback. But Pythagoras was already talking about this over 2,000 years ago. When it was still dangerous to say the universe had a soul, his teachings on universal harmony weren't just about notes and sounds. They were about living in tune with the whole finding. The rhythm of life, of breath, of thought, aligning oneself with nature, with others, with one's own being. That's why he emphasized balance. For Pythagoras, to live well was to live in harmony. And to harmonize, above all, meant to listen to. Listen to the world, to the body, to the silence between words. He used to say that the deepest knowledge isn't transmitted through books, but through vibrations. Pythagoras understood the universe as a harp and us as strings within it. When we are out of tune, we feel pain. But when we vibrate in the right tone, everything flows. And maybe in that moment, without realizing it, we become just another subtle note in the eternal music of the cosmos. For Pythagoras, the body was not the end of the journey. It was only a temporary station. The true identity of a human being did not lie in the flesh, nor in the name, nor in the biography. It resided in the soul. He believed the soul is immortal, and that it goes through cycles of birth, death, and rebirth in different forms of life. This idea, it's called metempsychosis or reincarnation, was more subtle than modern interpretations. The soul, according to him, not only survives death but carries impressions from previous lives. It moves like a lit flame, changing containers with each existence, but preserving something of the original fire. The quality of the next life depends on how we live this one. This vision came from his studies in Egypt, where priests taught that humans were composed of several parts: physical body, vital energy, mind, spirit, shadow. After death, each part followed a different path. It was also influenced by the Orphic mysteries of Greece, where the soul was seen as a temporary guest in a limiting body. That's why Pythagoras said the body was a prison, not in a negative sense, but as something that demands discipline. It's an opportunity to learn, refine, transform. It's like a laboratory where the soul is tested, shaped, tempered. The Pythagoreans believed the soul needed purification to escape the cycle of rebirth. Didn't come through public rituals, but through daily silent practices focused on self-control and self-knowledge. A non-violent diet, orderly thinking, carefully chosen words, music to uplift the spiritual of this was part of what we might call inner alchemy. For Pythagoras, true alchemy was not turning lead into gold, but ignorance into wisdom, not changing external matter, but transmuting the soul from within. The soul is only purified when it breaks free from ego, impulse, and blind repetition. Metempsychosis was also a lesson in humility. Could have been a king in one life, and a servant in the next, a philosopher today, and an animal tomorrow. The soul learns in all forms. Every living being is a vessel of consciousness. That's why he and his disciples abstained from eating meat not for dietary reasons, but out of compassion. This vision still resonates in Eastern traditions, but in Greece of that era, it was radical, saying the soul didn't die with the body was bold. Saying it could return as a fish or tree was nearly heretical. Even so, Pythagoras insisted, the purpose of life is not merely to live. It is to free oneself. Free from ignorance, from the automatic cycle of desires, from unconscious repetition. And that only happens when the soul remembers who it truly is. He called this process anamnesis, the recollection of essence, as if the soul knew everything from the beginning but forgot it at birth. Philosophy, music, silence, number. All of these serve to help it remember. Pythagoras didn't found a typical school. He created a spiritual community, a kind of temple disguised as a philosophical academy. Knowledge was transmitted not only through words but through gestures, silence, and way of life. This community emerged in the city of Croton, in southern Italy, where he gathered disciples from across the Greek world. Men and women, young and old, all willing to abandon ordinary life in search of harmony. But that harmony didn't come for free. Accepted, a candidate had to undergo a rigorous selection process. In the first stage, they were not allowed to speak for weeks, months, or even years. Their only task was to listen. Because as Pythagoras taught, before speaking wisely, one must learn to listen attentively. Silence was more than a test. It was a ritual, a way to slow the mind, perceive internal noise, realize how many unnecessary words we speak, and prepare the body and soul for something greater. Only after this period would the disciple receive the first teachings, and even then, never all. At once, knowledge was granted in stages, according to each one's inner maturity. Those who passed this phase were admitted to the inner order. From that point on, their lives changed radically. They awoke and slept at exact times, ate simple and regulated food, and devoted themselves to the study of mathematics, music, astronomy, and meditation. They lived in community yet maintained deep spiritual individuality. It was like a monastery without religion. There were rites, but not spectacles. There were exercises in awareness. For example, the contemplation of the pentagram, the sacred symbol of the order, was a frequent practice. Oaths carried special weight. One of the most sacred was sworn upon the tetractesa triangle, formed by the numbers 1, 2, 3, and 4, whose sum is 10. For the Pythagoreans, this symbol was not just geometric, it was spiritual. It represented the hidden structure of the universe. Swearing upon it meant committing to the pursuit of truth in every level of life. The most impressive aspect of the Pythagorean order was that it wasn't limited to knowledge. It shaped complete human beings. Pythagoras believed that knowledge without ethics was useless. That's why every member was trained to cultivate virtues like justice, temperance, courage, and moderation. They weren't looking for smart people, they wanted attuned souls? Over time, members began to influence politics in Croton and neighboring cities. Many became leaders, advisors, reformers. But not everyone was pleased. Pythagoreans were seen as a secret sect controlling politics from the shadows. In a world where power is fought over with ambition, a school based on virtue and wisdom became a threat. Tension grew. The order was attacked. The temple was burned. Some members were killed. Pythagoras fled, and with him many of the school's secrets vanished. But the impact remained. What survived reached us in fragments, short phrases, accounts from disciples, symbols carved in stone. As if the order had been dismantled on the outside but kept alive on the inside, in the minds and hearts of those who had heard the silence and understood its value. Today it may seem strange that a school like this ever existed, but perhaps what's truly strange is that we now live in a world that no longer values silence, listening, discipline, and inner transformation. In the order of Croton, philosophy wasn't just an idea, it was a practice. It shaped how you slept, how you ate, how you related to time. And this made every gesture, even the simplest, an act of tuning yourself to the cosmos. Pythagoras saw numbers. With different eyes, to him they weren't just symbols for counting things or solving practical problems. They were far more than tools, or living entities, fundamental principles of reality. Each number, each geometric shape, each proportion revealed something about the workings of the cosmos and the soul itself. That's why he said everything is number. And when he said that, he wasn't playing with words. He meant something that, even today, remains beyond ordinary mathematics. Numbers were the invisible structure behind everything that exists, from music to planets, from the human body to thoughts. Before matter, there was relation. Before form, there was number. He and his disciples studied the proportions of the human body, sacred geometric forms, and the orbits of celestial bodies. They searched for patterns. Whenever they found harmony, a proportion that repeated in nature, in art, in music, they saw it as a message from the universal order. Geometry was sacred because it revealed the invisible through the visible. A spiral, a triangle, a circle, each figure carried a teaching. Studying these shapes was like conversing with the divine. The most revered symbol was the tetractys, a triangle formed by the sum of the first four numbers. 1, 2 plus 3, 4 equals. This 10 was not just a round number, it was the synthesis of all things. The point 1, the line 2, the plane 3, and the volume 4. Everything that exists can be described through these four basic dimensions. Together, they reveal the whole. Disciples would swear upon the tetractys as if it were sacred scripture, and in a way it was. It represented the idea that reality has a pattern, that nothing is random, that there is intelligence behind creation. This vision didn't die with Pythagoras. It influenced the entire Western esoteric tradition. Kabbalists saw in numbers a bridge. Between God and the world, alchemists designed their experiments based on geometric proportions. Even today, in the architecture of temples, churches, and sacred monuments, we see echoes of this divine mathematics. Modern science is beginning to rediscover these ideas. Quantum physics shows that particles behave in mathematically predictable ways. Biology reveals that DNA follows proportional patterns. Digital art is built on fractals, infinite geometric repetitions. Everything seems to lead back to the same conclusion Pythagoras reached 2,500 years ago. There is a code behind everything. But this code is not just technical, it is aesthetic, spiritual. It's that the universe is not just a machine, but a work of art that knows it is being created. A creation made with equations, but that speaks to the heart. When you begin to perceive these patterns in the sky, in music, in everyday gestures, something changes. You begin to live differently, with more presence, with more reverence. The sense that there is order even when everything appears chaotic, that's what Pythagoras wanted to teach. It's not formulas to memorize, but a gaze to awaken. What you heard here is not a theory, it is a calling. Pythagoras didn't want to be worshipped. He wanted to be understood. To understand him, it takes more than reason, it takes inner silence. We live in a world of constant noise. But as he once said, true knowledge is found in the sound that is not heard, in the number that vibrates without being written, in the triangle that pulses between body, soul, and spirit. The forbidden teachings of Pythagoras were not destroyed. They merely went into hiding in the proportions of temples, in the rhythm of the breath, in the echo of a distant bell. If you've heard this music, perhaps you're ready to walk the path.